It's Wednesday, the 11th of August 2021. Welcome to Fear and Greed, the business podcast that sets you up for a successful day. I'm Sean Aylmer. The gloves come off between the federal and New South Wales governments over the best way to handle the COVID wave, which just keeps getting worse. That's our main story. Also coming up in today's podcast, business sentiment tumbles in the face of lockdowns along the East Coast, a gaming addict sues Crown Resorts for encouraging him to gamble, and the building boom does wonders for James Hardies' bottom line and share price. Then stay listening for my chat about technology companies coming together to raise the profile of the industry in Australia. But first, here's a brief look at markets. Major indices on Wall Street hit a record level overnight, though tech stocks fell. The US Senate passed a $1 trillion infrastructure bill, which should help the recovery in the world's largest economy, assuming it's passed in the House. In early afternoon trading, the S&P 500 was up 0.1%, the Dow Jones Industrial Average was 0.5% higher, and the Nasdaq was down 0.6%, led lower by Amazon. European markets were higher, with the Stoxx Europe 600 up 0.4%. That's 7 days in a row of gains. London's FTSE was 0.4% higher. Back home, the S&P ASX 200 closed up 0.3% yesterday to 7,563 points. Tech stocks did well, while industrials weighed on the bourse, particularly Transurban, which fell 2.8%. Energy companies were also lower. Afterpay jumped 3.3%, Aristocrat Leisure was up 2%, and Commonwealth Bank was 1.5% higher. Rio Tinto and Fortescue Metals were among the worst performers of the large caps. Online betting group PointsBet, which has come off its highs of earlier in the year and has fallen hard in recent weeks, jumped nearly 10% yesterday. And higher coal prices are helping Australia's biggest producer, Whitehaven Coal. Its share price jumped another 6% yesterday. Oil prices rebounded overnight after several weak sessions. The price of a barrel of Brent crude is up 3% to almost $71. The price of gold was flat overnight but has been falling back. That's whacked the gold miners on the ASX. Ramelius Resources was down nearly 6% yesterday. St Barbara was off 5%, and Westgold and Silver Lake were both 4% lower. The Aussie dollar is trading at 73.5 US cents, and Bitcoin is back. Well, it never went away, but its value is back up to $46,000 a unit. The uncomfortable coexistence between the federal and New South Wales governments that's become more and more awkward as the COVID-19 vaccination rollout has gone from bad to worse, yesterday hit a new low, with Prime Minister Scott Morrison critical of Premier Gladys language, which has moved away from achieving zero COVID transmissions in the community. On the day, the number of cases in New South Wales hit a 24-hour record of 356. The total from the current wave neared 4,000, and 3 more people died. The PM said there were no shortcuts to lockdowns. He said Australians had made sacrifices to get into the current position, which remains much better than most developed nations. It was important people didn't give up on lockdowns. In recent days, Ms Berejiklian has shifted her language towards reopening the city when vaccination rates hit a certain level, pretty much dropping the idea of eradicating the virus. She has said that people had to accept the basic fact that Delta was very different to other strains of the virus. Mr Morrison is hoping for states to stick to the national plan, to shift on lockdowns only when vaccination rates hit 70%. But Ms Berejiklian, whose state is struggling, is talking about partial reopenings once 50% vaccination rates were hit, even if its Chief Health Officer, Kerry Chant, yesterday again said it was premature to talk about easing restrictions in Greater Sydney. Construction workers and staff in office towers could be part of any reopening plans when 50% is reached, possibly early next month. In this debate, Ms Berejiklian is the realist. Eradication of the Delta strain has proven impossible everywhere else in the world. One expert at a New South Wales state government hearing yesterday suggested Greater Sydney would have to remain closed until November, and even then, the Delta strain wouldn't be eliminated. There's no reason why Australia will do any better than any other nations, so learning to live with the strain and reopening the economy to people who have been vaccinated when it's safe is the way to go. Again, the message is clear. Get vaccinated. In a moment, the rest of the news you need to know this morning. In overseas news, Amazon will start directly paying compensation to customers who are affected by dangerous products sold by independent sellers in its store, according to the Financial Times. Amazon is under pressure over the safety of goods on its site, and from next month, Amazon will compensate for personal injury or property damages on claims of up to $1,000. Apple is about to launch its latest version of the iPhone, which, according to Bloomberg, will include major camera and video recording upgrades. One will be the ability to record video in a higher quality format. The successor to the iPhone 12 is expected to go on sale in coming weeks. The governor of New York, Andrew Cuomo, who was considered a presidential candidate and has been lauded for his coronavirus response, resigned overnight in the face of multiple sexual harassment allegations. The high-profile politician said he didn't harass anyone, but was thoughtless in the way he spoke to and touched women on his staff. And researchers in the United States have asked regulators to pull some sunscreens from the market, including brands such as Coppertone, Banana Boat, and Neutrogena, saying they found evidence of a potential carcinogen. The active ingredient in the sunscreens that scientists are worried about is octocrylene, and they said it was unclear if the ingredient was safe or not. Locally, business sentiment tumbled into negative territory last month as lockdowns weighed on confidence across the country. The National Australia Bank monthly survey showed that the robust confidence in the first half of the calendar year dissipated as restrictions in Victoria, then Greater Sydney, and finally Southeast Queensland hit sentiment. But the mood is still more buoyant than the low point of 2020, and the bank's economists said they expected a bounce back once lockdowns eventually ended. Meanwhile, the weekly consumer confidence survey from ANZ and Roy Morgan fell into pessimistic territory for the first time since November last year. Sentiment in Brisbane and Melbourne was lower, but perhaps surprisingly, it was up in Sydney. A gambling addict is suing Crown Resorts for $4.5 million, alleging the gaming giant breached consumer laws after he was encouraged to continue betting even though he was in debt and his mother had warned he should be banned. Ahmed Hasna accused Crown of unconscionable conduct and breaking its own code of conduct when it allowed him to continue gambling and offered him free holidays and tickets and the ability to bet on credit. It's the first individual claim since the Victorian Royal Commission into Crown. The Prime Minister yesterday responded to the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change report, released on Monday night, which highlighted that Australia would be hit harder than many by climate change. Mr Morrison, who has a poor track record on the subject, refusing to commit to targets, pushed for big polluters like China and India to do more, and said Australia was doing its fair share. He also highlighted that investors were already pressuring companies around climate change, regardless of what governments were doing. The federal government spent $1.2 billion, that's $1.2 billion, on the 5 big consultancy companies last year, with Accenture winning $340 million worth of business. Deloitte was next in line with $275 million, followed by KPMG, EY and PwC, according to the Financial Review. That is a lot of money on consultants. Some of the biggest names in the tech sector in Australia are coming together to launch the Tech Council of Australia today to help promote jobs and grow the industry locally and bolster Australia's credentials as a tech hub. Led by Tesla chair Robin Denholm, who is Sydney-based, the group includes several co-founders of successful tech companies, including Atlassian's Scott Farquhar, Afterpay's Anthony Eisen, and Canva's Cliff Obrecht. Straight after the show, I'm talking to the inaugural CEO of the group, Kate Pounder, in this morning's interview. James Hardies is among the best performing large caps in recent times. The 19th largest company on the bourse is up almost 80% this year, as demand for building materials have surged in North America, Europe and Australia. It upped its profit guidance yesterday on the back of strong revenue growth in its fibre cement and building products businesses around the world during the June quarter. Chief Executive Dr. Jack Truong said the COVID pandemic had caused a fundamental shift in households, which are now much more willing to spend up on renovations, and rising house prices encourages rebuilds since people find it too expensive to move. The boss of annuity and fund management group Challenger Limited, Richard Howes, has unexpectedly resigned after 3 years in the job and 20 years at the company. The group made a $592 million profit last financial year, which benefited heavily from the turnaround in investment markets. Underlying profit was down 19% at Challenger, though the group upped its dividend. Challenger has been rumoured as a takeover target, and last month Apollo Global Management took an 18% stake in the company. Its share price finished up nearly 2% yesterday. The average revenue per user for the NBN is now $45, and the group has just 2 years to get it to $49 to avoid a write-down that could hurt the federal government's budget bottom line. Revenue for the last financial year was up 21%, with 8.3 million households now connected to the fibre optic network. The NBN posted pre-tax earnings of $1.35 billion, $2 billion better than last year. Commonwealth Bank has cut merchant fees for its customers who use the Buy Now Pay Later group Klarna. CBA is a shareholder in Swiss-based Klarna, and the aggressive move comes as market leader Afterpay is set to be sold to US payments giant Square for $39 billion. Merchant fees are a key revenue stream for Buy Now Pay Later groups, and the shift should help bolster both merchants and customer numbers for Klarna. It's amazing what a difference a share market analyst report can make. The lithium producer's share prices surged yesterday after JP Morgan boosted its outlook for both lithium, which is used in batteries, and some of the companies that dig it up. JP Morgan upgraded Pilbara Minerals and Mineral Resources to overweight. Pilbara closed yesterday up 11%, and Mineral Resources was up 2.2%. Another lithium miner, Orocobre, jumped nearly 9%. The price of lithium has doubled this year. In other results-related news, airline Rex will stand down staff and book a larger-than-expected full-year loss after the New South Wales lockdowns and subsequent border closures hit revenue. The company expected to book a net loss of $18 million for the 2021 financial year. Internet connectivity business Megaport said its financial year loss had increased to $55 million on 35% higher revenue, and that was enough to trigger a 3% rise in its share price. Tech Group Computer Shares profit fell on the back of lower investment earnings and restrictions of mortgage foreclosures in the US. Its share price finished slightly higher yesterday. And accounting software group Reckon reported increased earnings for the 6 months to the end of June, driven by the shift towards the cloud. Its share price rose 11%. Up next is our daily interview. And as I mentioned earlier in the show, my guest today is Kate Pounder, Chief Executive Officer of the newly formed Tech Council of Australia. Industry giants including Atlassian, Afterpay, Canva, Airtasker and others are launching the new peak body today, and it's really a who's who of the sector. The industry is already booming, but the Tech Council of Australia has even bigger goals ahead. That's up next in the Fear and Greed playlist on your podcast platform or at fearandgreed.com.au. It's Wednesday, the 11th of August, 2021. I'm Sean Aylmer, and that was Fear and Greed. Enjoy your day.